Hi, I'm David from Levika Photography, and today we're testing the Canon 11-24 f4L zoom lens on the 5DS. This is a pig of a lens. Oh my God. Let's take it off here. This lens by itself feels like my wife's curling weight. It literally feels like 2.5 pounds. I don't know how heavy it is, but it is heavy. No filter ring, built-in lens hood. The design of it actually reminds me of the 12-24 Sigma f4 to 5.6 variable lens. But this is not a variable, it's f4 all the way through. This is supposed to be the architectural lens that Canon has come out with. It's big, it's heavy, it's bulbous. You can't put any kind of filters on it. I imagine if you tried to get a filter on here, it would have to be about a 4.5-inch filter. And you could probably put a square filter, like tape it on there if you really needed to. But, you know, no neutral density, no polarizer, no grads. But anyway, how good is this? Well, let's go shoot some architecture and find out, because I want to know. It's like we're locked and loaded. God, this is so heavy. Oh, wow. So how heavy is this thing? It literally feels like the Pentax 645Z. This is what you see at 24mm. Now this is what you see at 11. That is some serious zooming distortion. I mean, absolutely crazy. So let's find us an architectural shot here that we can really work with and see what this thing does. Alright, so really quick, this is ultra wide. So the first thing I want to see is how well this actually controls flare control. And we'll get the sun in the corner of our shot here, like right in the extreme corner, and we'll take a picture of this. And right now we are at, oh, let me see here. We'll go all the way open to f4. And I'm going to put this on aperture priority so I don't have to screw with it. And we'll look at those in the studio. Overall, just looking at the back of the camera, it seems like the flare control is pretty good. But I mean, the distortion of this is just crazy. You can pretty much make any building look small. Alright, so here's the picture we just took, and you can see this is the sun right here. And check out the clouds behind it. I mean, this is really holding some good detail. And you can see that it does have some lens flaring going on. You know, it's not too bad. This is very well controlled, but also what you see over here is much darker sky. And the reason why is this lens is actually coated with polarized coatings. I think this is really cool. Anyway, back to our review. The amount of distortion on this thing is just unreal. Like, as far as zooming crazy ultra wide distortion, it's just nuts. So anyway, right here we're going to go ahead and we're going to cycle through this at f11 and see what we get. And then we'll take a look at these back in the studio. And we'll find where the sweet spot of this lens is. Okay, so right here we have f4, f8, f11, f16, and f22. And then this one goes backwards, f22, f16, f11, f8, f4. So this is all the way out, this is all the way in. So 24mm, 11mm. Anyway, let's compare these. So I can only compare 4 at a time, but let's take a look here. This should give us a good idea of what we got. Alright, so just to show you where we're at, let's show the EXIF data. So f4, f8, f16, and f22. Now, f22 obviously is really soft, and f16 a little bit better, f8 definitely sharp, and f4 definitely sharp. So let's go to the corners here. Oh, wrong way. Let's go to where we have some information in the corners. The lower corner. Okay, so here is the lower corner of the shot in the foreground. Now f22 obviously completely falling apart. f16 is just okay. f11 or f8 is holding up much better. So we know that the sweet spot of this thing, and f4 is actually doing really well too. This is very surprising. Okay, so let's compare. We'll close this and we'll say f4, f8, and f11. You can compare these three images here and see what we got. Right off the bat, I'm going to say that f8 is doing much better than f11. So let's go down to the bottom of the image and look at the foreground. Alright, so the foreground seems to be pretty equal. Let's look at the trees in the background, especially this spot right here. They all seem to be almost about the same. I mean, there really isn't a huge difference. But at this point, I am going to say, for this particular image, I think any of these would actually work. But realistically, the sweet spot of this lens, I believe that is going to be right in the middle here at f8. Because if we look at the actual detail, and yes, you guys can call me a pixel peeper because this is what I do, I look at details. So anyway, if you look at the detail of the bark here, it's just a little bit stronger at f8, but still very usable at f11. So I would say excellent at f8. Alright, so let's close this. Let's look at these. Okay, so looking at our data here, f22 is here, f16 here, f8 here, and f4 here. So just by looking at the center of this lens, this tree branch, actually a century plant stock, is out of focus. Whereas at f16 it looks like it's completely in focus, f11 it's still a little bit out. So if we go down here to the bottom and look across our image, that seems to be the case. So in this case, f4 not so usable. Alright, so let's slide off to the side here and look at the extreme corners and see what we got. And you can definitely see f22 is a little softer. So at this point, at 24 millimeter, I'm going to say it's somewhere between f16 and f11 is going to be the sharpest point of the lens. Let's look at the other side here really quick. And yeah, this does seem to be the case. So if you want everything in focus, go to f16. If you have a large range of depth of field that you need to cover. Now in this case we really don't, so f11 is probably adequate for this image. But yeah, very sharp. You know, no distortions, very few chromatic aberrations. As a matter of fact, if you look at the chromatic aberrations on this, let's zoom in here and go to a corner. This is usually where it's worst. It's where sunlight's hitting something. And usually it's on the paint or the wall. I'm not seeing a whole lot. Right here, we've got just a little bit. Very faint orange line. I mean, this is minuscule. This thing controls chromatic aberrations very well. And by the way, it controls lens distortion, barrel distortion as well, too. I mean, just a fantastic lens. What if we actually wanted to edit down one of these photos? What would that be like? Okay, let me go to the raw files and show you how this lens works. Okay, we'll pull this image in. This is f8, and this is pretty much the sweet spot of the ultra-wide in my opinion. So let's see here what this actually looks like. Now there is no barrel distortion on this lens, which is just amazing. I'm going to crank these up a little bit. I don't want that much saturation. Just a little bit of saturation, maybe more than that. 8. Can't type. Okay, so let's bring our highlights down just a little bit. Let's bring our shadows down just a little bit so we can pull more detail out of this. Let's make this look like an architectural digest image. And I'll go ahead and open it. So overall this looks really, really solid. I mean, extremely sharp. And if we slide over here, we do have some chromatic aberrations right here, some longitudinal chromatic aberrations. This blue line that you see right on this edge here, crosses here. So, you know, I'd re-import it again and adjust the chromatic aberrations in the raw editor. But just for time's sake, let's go ahead and do a quick edit of this to make this look like an actual architectural image. So we'll go filter and then we'll go into lens correction. And normally I like to do lens correction in here versus the raw importer if it's some extreme adjustment, which in this case it definitely is. So here we go. We'll tilt it up, and our image overall looks like it's just slightly crooked. That's 0.7. That actually looks pretty good. Now our horizontal perspective, let's get that straight. And just so you guys can see what I'm doing here, here's the grid. And then we will go ahead and this roof actually does have just a touch of sag to it in the front, but we'll hide that. We'll use this to do it. We'll pop this up just a little bit. Okay, so this is pretty much it. I mean, that's the most that I can adjust in here. So if I bring it in here, and now we'll do edit, select all, free transform, perspective. We're just going to tweak this just a hair more, just to get those vertical lines as vertical as we possibly can. That is a lot of tweaking. But the beauty of this camera and lens combination is we're not really losing much detail. I mean, for a magazine ad, this would be perfect. Look at how sharp that is. And it held up through our adjustments just fine. And just to show you, let's go filter, sharpen, unsharp mask, and then we'll go in here and we'll say we want probably 1 pixel at 100%. Just to tighten everything up, maybe 1.1. Yeah. That's pretty much as tight as you can get it. Now to me, that looks like an extremely clean photo. Now what we do have here is we have one lens flare. Probably the sun in the corner is just barely glancing the bulb. So you have to really make sure that you shade this thing in order to avoid that. But in this situation, that's an easy enough fix. But anyway, that looks like a very standard architectural image. And this is a good representation of what this place looks like. And the crazy thing is you know, you do this at 11mm wide, so you have so much room for adjustment. It's just insane how well this works. This lens has a constant aperture of f4. It has 9 blades in its aperture, and the blades are curved. It's got 16 elements and 11 groups, an ultra-low dispersion element to help keep chromatic aberrations down, a bazillion different types of little nano coatings in it that are for whatever, and then it also has a polarizing coating actually on the glass. It's weather sealed. It has an ultrasonic, ultra quiet autofocus system, which is really nice. It weighs a ton, actually 2.6 pounds. And although the L does state luxury, in this case the L actually states lumpy, because this thing is just huge. Okay, so this has a gel filter system built onto the back of the lens, but it actually doesn't come with any when you buy it, so kind of a bummer. Oh my God, this thing's heavy. Big ass lens cap. Big. This is not what I consider a portable solution at all. Now, what I will probably go out on a limb and say is this is probably the sharpest ultra-wide lens I've ever seen, ever. Phenomenal. It's just so big. I mean, if you are a die-hard pro looking for a very serious solution for shooting architecture, this is it. I mean, definitely worthy. If you're a landscape photographer, I would also recommend this, but I wouldn't be backpacking into anything with this thing. I mean, this takes me back to when I used to shoot my Hasselblad, and I'd carry 3 lenses and a bunch of film backs. I mean, this has got some girth to it, some serious weight. I mean, serious weight. It's like, holy crap. But believe me, you get every ounce out of it that you can. Anyway, you can rent this lens from Tempe Camera and try it out if you're ever in Arizona. I'm not sure what the day rates are. I'll post them in the description, but yeah, this is one sick setup as far as putting you in the actual photo. That's what it feels like. It's just insane. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment. Otherwise, we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.